time for another episode of Sudbury Politics, the show, featuring your hosts, Jeff McIntyre, Rachel Adrians, and Richard Eberhardt, bringing you analysis on the political news of the day from a Sudbury perspective. COVID-19 has filled Ontario's hospitals, locked down our province, and we're supposed to stay at home, leaving some Northern Ontarians to ask, what about just shutting the doors to the south? We talk about that on this episode of Sudbury Politics, the show.
Build the wall and Toronto's going to pay for it. Welcome back to Sudbury Politics, the show. We're talking about a northern border. It's been talked about throughout the entire COVID discussion. Should we be looking at sectioning off Northern Ontario from Southern Ontario? Is that a good idea? Rachel, what's your take on this one?
Is it a good idea? Probably. Can we do it? I don't know legally in that respect, but yeah, I think this notion of kind of separating Northern Ontario from Southern Ontario is not a new discussion, but now in light of the severity of COVID and recently with I think this new COVID strain coming in from the UK, seeing that more GTA area, it's more of an active discussion now. So yeah, I mean, obviously the prevalence of cases are a lot higher in Southern Ontario. When we're all in lockdown, okay, no one's really hopping around to do different things. I think my concern, which I'm sure a lot of people echo, once those start, if they loosen up restrictions in certain areas, then, I don't want people from the south coming up here and spreading it and vice versa. I think, we've seen, if you look at the Atlantic, they've been a lot more strict in their provinces in terms of, if cases are getting worse, like Nova Scotia, for example, just restricted with New Brunswick. So I think, yeah, I'm talking about non-essential. I think if there's instances where, say you have a medical appointment, like I know so many of us go from the north to the south for appointments, stuff like that. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I don't know, Jeff, why don't you go first? What do you think? Okay, looking at this from your work doesn't really have borders or boundaries right now because you do it in your shorts from your living room. But you know a lot about retail and you know a lot about our small business community. Is a travel restriction between Southern Ontario and Northern Ontario economically possible at any time? Let's even put the rights, and I want to get into the rights side of things. Is it a good idea?
So, yes. The whole thing with a pandemic like this is about how much can you reduce interactions between humans. That's basically what we're trying to do. And the more you can compartmentalize that, the easier it becomes to control spread. You're going to need to have passing back and forth between Southern Ontario and Northern Ontario and things like this. But when you reduce the amount of traffic back and forth, you reduce the chance that you bring it across. People that are bitching about, Canada needs a travel ban. It's insane. You just can't do it. But you do need to reduce that traffic to a manageable amount.
Well, when you say that, do you mean an intra-provincial travel ban? Like you can't leave?
I'm talking about international, I'm talking about interprovincial, and I'm talking about national. So the more you can reduce the movement of humans, period, the better. And the more you can compartmentalize that movement of humans, the better. Because then you can isolate, okay, well, this area got hit. It's not necessarily going to affect the rest of the community. I know of communities in the States that have been hit with COVID, and they actually said, okay, well, you can't leave your neighborhood, right? You got to stay in your neighborhood. So you've got a grocery store. Everybody from this neighborhood can only go to these grocery stores. and they compartmentalized it down to that, and they were able to reduce it. This has happened in China, and it has happened in other nations. You look at the places that got COVID under control early, they're small geographies. They were able to compartmentalize even within those small geographies and said, you can't leave this part of New Zealand and go to that part of New Zealand until this part cleared out.
Isolated land masses.
Yeah.
Islands in particular.
Yeah, and can you do that constitutionally? I don't know. Should you? Yes.
Well, let's talk about that, right? Okay, because there's no point in talking about whether you should do something if it's completely impossible to do it, right? I mean, we should just eliminate COVID then, right? Like, why not? But because we can't, that's why we have to wait until we get vaccinated. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that this is a bad concept. I don't think it's a great concept. I don't like the idea of drawing artificial lines within a province. I think that's tricky. I think that it's even trickier when you start to restrict a charter right within restrict a charter right using arbitrary lines, right? So
lines are arbitrary.
Well, Northern Ontario exists, right? So everything that's not a township, everything that's in a district versus a county is Northern Ontario. The North is laid out that way. So you could use that as a definition, and you could also use other definitions as lines. But every time, there is no boundary between Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. It doesn't exist. There's some lines, and you can interpret them in different ways. But that is going to result in an immediate challenge in court, and I don't think it stands up. Now, they've upheld, the Supreme Court has upheld travel bans in COVID.
Yeah.
I don't think this one holds, because they have to be able to say that everything else has been done, and this is the only thing left to do to protect this population. Whereas we know there are COVID cases here. The COVID cases are, we now have COVID cases in the region. Yeah. They're transmitting in the region. If you drew a line, we may still not see an end. We're still going to have to maintain lockdown. We're going to have to stay at home orders, have mask ones. All that stuff's in place. It just could potentially stop introducing new ones. Let's say you could legally do it. Logistically, could you do it?
Yes.
And what about, so can we now, if you and I have to travel to down south for business or for some purpose, are we allowed to do that? Can someone who's down south travel up here? Well, what is our driver's license then like a passport to our house?
Well, and there's different ways to handle that. One of them would be you do it based on a deeper investigation into whether that person had the right to go if they get COVID, right? You increase your risk. So if I have to go to Toronto for work and I go down there and I get COVID and I come back and I get tested, then they're going to look into my travel history and they're going to go, well, why did you go to Toronto? What did you do down there? Right? And the downside of that is that does that prevent people from getting healthcare in the first place and spreading it because they try and hide the fact they got COVID, right? But there's ways that you could manage it and reduce. Again, you're not going to be able to stop movement from Sudbury to Toronto, or vice versa. You're not going to be able to stop movement from the rest of the world to Canada. There's legitimate reasons that goods, services, and people need to go from country to country from time to time. That's going to happen. We can't stop it, but we can slow it. In the same way that the reason, like when you look at the lockdown rules, they're kind of wishy-washy. And they're wishy-washy for the same reason, is that they're not really constitutional to just start saying, don't leave your house for 6 months. So, all of this stuff becomes a little bit tight. it really boils down to us not being assholes and following the protocols. And, you know, I'll be the first one to say that, you know, there's been times where I didn't wear my mask when I was supposed to, or I walked into somewhere and I went, oh shit, or I forgot. You know, it's going to happen, and that's what's causing the spread. And nobody in this community is 100%.
My question to you is, what do they say first? Sir, your mask, or sir, your pants?
Usually they say, sir, your mask, and nice butt.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't know.
A question for you, Rachel. Question for you. If we were to do this, we were to have this, would we maintain all the other lockdown procedures that the rest of the province did? I mean, remember we were talking about regional opening? We had a significant disagreement about whether regional opening was a good thing. We did regional opening for a while. Now we're not doing it anymore. Why? Because we know, and I have members that I service that are in hotels in North Bay, and guess what? They were full of snowmobilers who now can't snowmobile anymore because they had to shut down the snowmobile trails. Well, guess what? Those snowmobilers are going to be in Sudbury instead of using our trails because there is not enough snow down south to use their trails, and they haven't bothered opening them. So people are staying in our hotels, and they are doing recreation up here. Are we going to shut down, are we going to reopen our economy, or is everything going to stay the same plus a border? Because I know, right? People want to reopen. Is a border around Northern Ontario just code word for let's stop the lockdown up here?
No. Like I think the problem is all these restrictions are clearly not working. I think that if you put a border up, it doesn't mean that you necessarily take away what's already in place. You know, maybe little, you could adjust it. Maybe, if we didn't have, we stopped seeing cases on the rise in this area, maybe, that 5 people we can hang out with outside, we can have, back to 10, great, I can friggin' ice fish with my friends again, but I don't think that you just say screw it to everything else.
Jeff? Am I turned around on this? Because the word that I'm hearing, and when I hear from people like Councillor Jacobo, or city councillor here in Sudbury, saying, well, we should have a border around the north, the sense that I get is because that way we can reopen.
And yes, not fully reopen and not go to full bore, but we need production. We need people doing things to keep the economy alive in the province. And you take the segments of the province that are healthy and doing well, and you let them take the load for a while and go back to work and do some stuff and pay some taxes and not be on CERB, and do things so that you don't go into the enormous debt that you'd have to do if you lock everybody down. Because quite frankly, we can't lock Canada down to the point to get rid of it. That's not going to happen. It's a matter of, can we manage this until the vaccines are in enough arms that we're not killing a massive amount of the population. So if you can get a population down to 0, you isolate that population, you let them get back to some normalcy. Eventually it's going to creep back in, you slow it back down and start putting in some restrictions and go, okay, let's get this back down to 0. Which is what was kind of happening in Sudbury. We had some cases. We were in kind of a modified lockdown. Things were getting better. Some stuff came in over Christmas. I think everybody knew Christmas was going to be a shit show because people were going to cheat the system and go tour around and see their families. And it spiked it, which I think is a smart idea to lock everything back down. I don't think people are necessarily doing a good job on this lockdown. I see a lot of people in the streets and just kind of acting like nothing really changed except they don't go to their office anymore. So, I think that's a problem. But I think if we could get this lockdown under control, I think it also motivates a region, right, to have social pressure. So it's very difficult to tell somebody in Sudbury, look, lockdown, you're down to 0. Keep that lockdown going until those guys in Toronto catch up, right?
Yeah.
If you go to the rest of the province, you go, okay, all of you open up. Toronto's got a problem. Tell Toronto time and time again, get your numbers down to what theirs are, you can open too.
So
Yeah.
the one thing that I think can justify building a wall around the north is the vaccination process. I think we're going to be okay in Sudbury. We're a large city with an intensive healthcare operation, but we've got lots of smaller communities, and they're really far from here, and they're really far from major centers. And I don't think that we have a good sense of where along the path our residents in Northern Ontario are going to be vaccinated compared to people who live in Ottawa and Toronto and Peel region and Durham region and Simcoe. And if they're getting vaccinated in good numbers, but we're not, and there's a discrepancy there, then maybe we are in a position where we have to say, listen, you guys can't come up here because who knows if you got the vaccine or not. We definitely don't have it. Until they start really distributing the vaccine here, there's a potential for division. So Rachel, do we build the wall?
Build the wall, keep everything just keep your eye on it for a bit. If it goes down, then yes, it'd be nice to see shit open again around here. Build the wall of Greater Sudbury.
And make Toronto pay for it.
Build that wall. Build
Make Sudbury great again. Yay.
I think a northern boundary is a little too much. I think it should be Sudbury, North Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, Thunder Bay. Like, God, Thunder Bay gets their numbers down to 0.
Yeah.
If Thunder Bay gets their numbers down to 0, what's happening in Winnipeg has a lot more to do with them getting a revamp than what happens in Sudbury. Because they don't come east to do things, they go west. That's their Toronto, is Winnipeg, right? They're that disconnected from us. So I think Northern Ontario is too big of a boundary. I think it should be more regionalized than that. I even think Southern Ontario should be regionalized out and say, don't go back and forth between communities. Is it difficult to manage? Yes.
It's extreme. You just dialed up the complexity by a factor of 10, right?
Yeah.
Will people cheat it? Yes. But this whole system is built on a trust factor, and it whatever layer you get this thing down to, it's trust. It's, are you going to cheat the system on your way home from work and go see a friend? Are you going to wear your mask when you're talking to somebody in your office and hanging out? All of the system needs to be built on trust. We need to be better at that as a community. We're not doing a good job of it right now. But that needs to be the messaging, and it needs to be, look, yeah, Southern Ontario, don't come to Northern Ontario anymore. Northern Ontario, hotels, things like that. If you see people from Southern Ontario, tell them get the hell out. Don't travel right now, right? Like, don't do that. It's not a great idea. And reduce that as much as possible. And
I just want to be able to go get a draft beer.
you're going to break the rules every once in a while. Probably people are going to do it the same way. People speed. You shouldn't speed. Speed kills. People die from speeding all the time, right? They kill their families. They do things like, we make life and death decisions on a regular basis that affect other people, and we need to be responsible about that as humans that live in this province. Putting in a regional restriction, people are going to break the rules. I'll guarantee it. But a lot of people won't, and it'll reduce the amount of travel between the areas. It'll allow the economy to come back. It's about managing this until we get to a vaccine. It's going to take about a year to get there. We got to do what we can to balance out mental health, businesses staying afloat, the ability for the economy to rebound after this, regular health, like heart disease is up. If you look at the obituaries, there's a lot of people dying right now from, diseases that frankly are just a lack of exercise. We need to manage more than just COVID. It's a big deal, but it's not the only deal. We got to do that by just being better humans.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, share your thoughts. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/SudburyPolitics. Let us know what you thought about the episode and share it with your friends so they can share their thoughts too. We're so glad you joined us, and we hope you tune in again for Sudbury Politics, the show.